My parents left me nothing in their will, while my brother got everything. So I stopped paying their bills. Weeks later, Mom texted, "The rent is due." I replied with one sentence. My name is Jake, and I'm 32 years old. Up until recently, I honestly thought I had a solid relationship with my parents. Not perfect, sure. I was never blind. I always knew they favored my younger brother Ethan, but even knowing that, I never thought they would take it as far as they eventually did. Ethan had always been the golden child. Growing up, it was obvious to everyone, except apparently my parents. He got away with things I never could. He received praise for doing the bare minimum. And whenever he messed up, my parents always had an excuse ready for him. He's just young. He's figuring things out. You need to be patient with him, Jake. Meanwhile, I was expected to be the responsible one, the mature one, the one who had to lead by example. And I did. I worked hard in school, I got a decent job, I built a stable life for myself. I became the kind of son parents usually brag about. Ethan, not so much. At 28, he was still bouncing between jobs, constantly figuring things out, and he had lived with my parents rent-free his entire adult life. Yet somehow, they always acted like he had it so much harder than I ever did. Anytime I tried to point out the double standard, I got the same response. Jake, you're independent. You don't need us the way Ethan does. That was their justification for everything. If I got a cheap birthday gift while Ethan got the latest gaming console, they said, Jake, you have a good salary now. You can buy things for yourself. If I had to help around the house while Ethan lounged on the couch, they said, he's just not as responsible as you. If Ethan wrecked their car and they paid to fix it while I had to buy my own first car with my own money, they said, you can handle it, Jake. And for years, I swallowed it. I let it go. I told myself it was not worth fighting over. Then I found out about the will. I had been helping my parents financially for years. I covered part of their mortgage. I paid for home repairs. I chipped in for medical bills. I helped with groceries when things got tight. I never did any of that expecting a reward. They were my parents, and I wanted to make sure they were taken care of. I thought that was what a son was supposed to do. But one day, completely by accident, I learned that they had left everything to Ethan. The house, the savings, their belongings, everything. It happened while I was visiting their house to help them sort through some paperwork. My mom had left a folder on the kitchen table while she stepped away to take a phone call. I glanced at it absent-mindedly, not snooping, not searching for anything, just noticing what was right there in front of me. And that was when I saw my name, or rather, the complete absence of it. Ethan was listed as the sole inheritor. When my mom came back into the room, I asked her about it. I was not angry. Yet. I was confused. Hurt, maybe. But mostly, I just wanted to understand. Instead of looking guilty or even slightly uncomfortable, she acted like it was nothing. Oh, that, she said, waving her hand like I had asked about an old receipt. We just figured it made the most sense. You have a good job. You have a stable life. Ethan, well, he's not as lucky. He's going to need the help more than you. I could not believe what I was hearing. I asked her, so because I worked hard and built a stable life, I get nothing, even after everything I have done for you? She frowned at me like I was being unreasonable. You don't need it, Jake. It's just money. You'll be fine. Something in me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deep inside, something broke. For years, I had been their safety net. I had given and given and given, and the moment I stopped to ask whether I mattered at all, I was dismissed like a greedy child throwing a tantrum. I realized then and there that in their eyes, I was not really a son in the same way Ethan was. I was a resource, someone they could rely on when they needed help, someone responsible, someone useful, but not someone they valued enough to treat fairly. So I made a decision. I stopped paying their bills. I stopped covering their mortgage. I stopped sending money for groceries, repairs, and unexpected expenses. If I did not matter enough to be included in their will, then surely they did not need my financial support either. It did not take long for reality to hit them. At first, they said nothing. Maybe they thought I was busy. Maybe they thought I had forgotten. Maybe they assumed I would eventually fall back into line like I always had. Then, about a month later, I got a text from my mom. No greeting, no small talk, no, how are you? No, hope you're doing well. Just 4 words. The rent is due. That was it. A demand, as if I was their personal ATM. I stared at that message for a long time, feeling anger, hurt, disappointment, and something close to disbelief, even though I should have expected it. Finally, I replied. I did not yell, I did not curse, I did not beg her to understand how unfair they had been. I simply wrote, I'm sure Ethan will handle it. That was all. No explanation, no argument. I sent it, put my phone down, and went about my day. It did not take long for the backlash to begin. Less than an hour later, my phone buzzed. It was a call from my mom. I ignored it. Then another call came, and another. Finally, she texted, Jake, answer the phone. This isn't funny. I let it sit there. I was not in the mood to entertain whatever guilt trip she was preparing. Sure enough, when I checked my voicemail later, I got exactly what I expected. Her voice was dripping with disappointment. Jake, I don't know what has gotten into you, but this is really selfish. Your father and I have always done our best for you. Is this really the kind of son you want to be? Ignoring us when we need you? Ethan can't afford to help right now. He's struggling. We thought you'd understand that. Call me back. I did not call her back. A few hours passed before the next message came, this time from my dad. He rarely texted me, so I knew my mom must have gotten him involved. His message said, Jake, we need to talk. This is serious. Call your mother. I ignored that too. And for the first time in years, I felt something I had not felt before. Control. I had spent so long playing the role of the dutiful son, the responsible son, the one who never asked for anything, the one who always stepped in. But the moment I refused to be used, they lost their minds. Then, exactly as I expected, Ethan got involved. Dude, what is wrong with you? Mom and Dad are freaking out. Just pay the rent like you always do. Why are you being so difficult? I almost laughed. Like you always do, as if it was my job to keep a roof over their heads. As if the fact that he was their favorite somehow meant the responsibility automatically shifted to me. I finally responded, but I kept it short. Not my problem. His response came within seconds. What does that mean? You can literally afford it. Stop being a dick. I set my phone down without replying. It was incredible how quickly the entitlement came out. No. Hey, are you okay? No, I didn't realize how much you were helping. No. Maybe this is unfair. Just immediate anger that I was not keeping the ship afloat for them. I expected more text, maybe a few angry voicemails, but what I did not expect was what happened next. The next day, I woke up to a message from my Aunt Lisa, my mom's sister. Hey, sweetie, your mom just called me in tears. She says you're refusing to help them and that they're at risk of losing the house. What's going on? I thought you guys were close. I sighed. Of course, the flying monkeys had arrived. I took a deep breath before responding. Hey, Aunt Lisa. I appreciate you checking in. I'd love to explain, but I think you should ask Mom why she left me out of the will completely while still expecting me to pay their bills. Let me know what she says. There was a long pause before she finally replied. Wait. What? I smirked. That was my cue to step back and watch the fallout begin. Because now it was not just between me and my parents anymore. Now the rest of the family was about to find out exactly what had been happening behind closed doors, and I had a feeling my parents were not going to like it. Aunt Lisa did not text back right away, and I figured she was either trying to get the full story from my mom or just processing what I had said. Either way, I was not going to chase her for a response. Instead, I went about my day, enjoying the rare peace that came with not being at my parents' beck and call. But that peace did not last long. By the afternoon, my phone lit up again. This time, it was my mom. How could you say that to Lisa? This is a family matter, not her business. You're making us look bad. There it was. Not, we're sorry. Not, let's talk about this. Not, I didn't realize how unfair this was to you. Just pure outrage that their actions were now being questioned by someone else. I waited a few minutes before responding. It became her business the moment you dragged her into it. If you don't want people knowing what you did, maybe you shouldn't have done it. That shut her up, at least for the moment. Then Ethan chimed in again. Mom is literally crying right now. Do you feel good about that? Do you feel good about making your own mother cry? I stared at the text and shook my head. The manipulation was so blatant, it was almost funny. Almost. I typed back. If she's crying, it's because she's realizing actions have consequences. Not my problem. I sent it, and this time Ethan did not respond right away. Maybe he was running back to Mom and Dad, feeding them my words so they could all sit together and fume about how awful I was. Meanwhile, I was starting to realize just how much weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For years, I had been the responsible one, the dependable one, the one who picked up the slack while my parents coddled Ethan and let him skate through life without consequences. And what did I get for it? Nothing, not even an acknowledgement in their will. I had sacrificed vacations, I had skipped nights out, I had even put off buying a home of my own because I was always helping them, and they never once truly appreciated it. I was done. A few hours passed, and then my phone rang again. This time I answered because it was Aunt Lisa. Hey, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Hey, Jake, she said, and I could tell from her tone that she was treading carefully. I just got off the phone with your mom. I waited and let her continue. She told me a very different version of what's going on. I almost laughed. Let me guess. She made it sound like I'm some selfish, greedy son who suddenly decided to abandon them for no reason. There was a pause, then a quiet sigh. More or less. I leaned back in my chair. Did she mention that I've been covering their bills for years, or that they left me out of the will entirely while giving Ethan everything? Another pause. No, Lisa said. She left that part out. Of course she did. I kept my tone even. Well, that's what happened. Lisa sighed again. Jake, I had no idea. I really didn't. And honestly, I don't blame you one bit. That surprised me. Really? Of course. Look, I love your mom. She's my sister. But she has always played favorites with Ethan. And I hate to say it, but I think she just assumed you would always be there to clean up their messes. She assumed you would never say no. Well, I said she assumed wrong. Lisa was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, So what now? I exhaled slowly. Now they figure it out on their own. I'm done being their safety net. Lisa did not argue. In fact, she let out a dry little chuckle. Honestly, good for you. We talked for a few more minutes, and before we hung up, Lisa said something that stuck with me. I have a feeling this isn't over. They're going to try something. Be careful, Jake. She was not wrong. Later that evening, I got another text from Ethan. Fine. If you want to act like a selfish asshole, go ahead. Just don't come crawling back when you realize you messed up. I stared at the message for a second before shaking my head. Messed up? I had not messed up a single thing. If anything, this was the first time in years that I was finally getting something right. But Ethan's text made one thing very clear. They were not going to back down that easily. And part of me was almost looking forward to whatever they tried next. The next morning, I woke up to pounding on my front door. Not a polite knock, not even an impatient one. This was the kind of pounding that made you think someone was about to break the door down. I already knew who it was before I even checked the peephole. For a second, I debated ignoring it and letting them stand out there and fume. But something told me that if I did not answer, they would just keep banging until the neighbors complained. With a sigh, I opened the door. Sure enough, there stood my parents and Ethan. My mom had her arms crossed, her face pinched with disapproval. My dad, as usual, stood slightly behind her, like he always did when she was in full attack mode. And Ethan had the same smug, self-satisfied expression he always wore when he thought he was in control of a situation. I leaned against the doorframe with my arms crossed. Wow, this is unexpected. Mom did not waste time. Jake, we need to talk. I let out a small chuckle. Oh, now you want to talk. Not when you were writing me out of the will. Not when you were expecting me to keep paying your bills while giving Ethan everything. Now, suddenly, it's urgent? Dad sighed like I was being difficult. Son, can we come in? I pretended to think about it, then shook my head. No, I don't think so. We can have this conversation right here. Ethan scoffed. Are you serious? Dead serious. Mom huffed, clearly not used to being denied what she wanted. Jake, you're being childish. Childish, I repeated, raising an eyebrow. That's rich coming from the people who showed up at my house unannounced, pounding on my door like debt collectors. Mom's face turned red, but she took a deep breath, trying to regain control. Listen, she said, shifting into what I had always thought of as her guilt trip voice. We know you're upset. We understand that you're feeling left out, but you have to look at this rationally. I actually laughed. Rationally? You want to talk about rationality after what you did? Dad, who had been quiet up until then, finally chimed in. Son, you're doing well for yourself. You have a good job. You have a stable life. Ethan needs more help. I turned to Ethan, who was still standing there with his arms crossed like this whole thing was beneath him. He needs more help, I repeated. He is a grown man. He's not a kid. He has had every advantage handed to him while I had to work for everything I have. And now, after all that, you decided he deserves to inherit everything while I get nothing. Ethan smirked. It's not my fault you didn't fight for it. I stared at him, genuinely stunned by how shameless he was. Fight for it? I repeated, my voice quiet. Fight for what? My own parents' love? My own share of what should have been an equal inheritance. Mom waved a hand dismissively. Oh, stop being dramatic. We just thought it made sense. You don't need the money. That's not the point, I snapped. It's not about needing the money. It's about fairness. It's about the fact that you used me for years. You took my help. You took my money. You took my time. And then you tossed me aside like I was nothing when it came to the one thing that should have been fair. Mom's eyes flashed. Jake, we are your parents. We raised you. The least you could do is show us some respect. I laughed, a short, sharp sound. Respect? You want respect when you have shown me none? Ethan rolled his eyes. God, you're so dramatic. You're seriously throwing a tantrum over this. You're acting like you're some poor, struggling victim. I turned to him, my voice ice cold. You really want to talk about struggling? When was the last time you had to work a full-time job without mom and dad bailing you out? Oh, wait, you never have. That wiped the smug look off his face, but before he could fire back, Mom cut in again. Enough, she snapped. Then she took a deep breath and smoothed out her features. Look, Jake, this is not how I wanted this conversation to go, but the reality is, you're family, and family takes care of each other. I could practically hear the trap she was setting. Uh-huh. I said, not giving her anything. She sighed as if this was exhausting for her. The mortgage is due. I tilted my head. And we're a little short this month. I could not help it. I actually laughed. Are you serious? After everything you just said, after standing here defending your choices, you're still asking me for money? Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. Jake, we are asking you to do the right thing. There it was. The manipulation. The guilt. The expectation that no matter how badly they treated me, I would still come running the second they needed something. I took a deep breath, looked each of them in the eye, and said, no. Mom flinched like I had slapped her. Excuse me? I said, no. I repeated, my voice steady. I am not paying a single cent. Not now, not ever again. Ethan let out a low whistle. Wow. So that's it, huh? You're just going to let your own parents lose their home over some petty grudge? I stared at him. You live there too, don't you? Maybe you should step up and pay for once in your life. His face darkened. You're selfish, Jake. Mom was not done. Jake, she said, her voice dangerously low. Do you really want to do this? Do you really want to walk away from your family over money? I met her gaze without flinching. That's funny, I said. Because from where I'm standing, you walked away from me first. She opened her mouth, but I did not let her speak. You made your choice. You chose Ethan. You chose to leave me out. Now I'm making my choice, and I choose to be done." Then I stepped back and shut the door in their faces. For a few seconds, there was silence. Then I heard my mother's muffled voice through the door. "This isn't over, Jake." I smiled to myself. No, it was not, because something told me they were about to learn just how badly they had messed up. I did not expect them to leave right away. My mother was not the kind of person who backed down when she thought she was owed something. Sure enough, less than a minute after I shut the door, the knocking started again. This time it was louder, angrier. My mom's voice was shrill, barely muffled through the door. "You're making a huge mistake. You're going to regret this." I leaned against the door with my arms crossed and listened to her rant. Dad, ever the quiet follower, muttered something I could not quite make out, probably trying to calm her down. But Ethan, the golden child, had no such patience. "You're such a selfish piece of garbage, you know that?" he shouted. "All those years we took care of you." That actually made me laugh. I swung the door back open just enough to glare at him. "You took care of me?" "That's funny, Ethan, because I seem to remember working 2 jobs in college while you had mom and dad paying your way. I seem to remember lending you money that you never paid back. I seem to remember bailing mom and dad out while you sat around doing nothing." His smug expression wavered, but he quickly recovered. "Well, I was the one they trusted with their estate, wasn't I? Maybe you're just mad that you weren't good enough." I clenched my jaw and inhaled sharply. This was what he wanted. He wanted to get under my skin. He wanted to make me react. He wanted me to lash out, so I would be the one who looked like the bad guy. I refused to give him that satisfaction. Instead, I simply smiled. "Good luck with that estate then. I'm sure it'll be real helpful when you're struggling to pay the mortgage next month." Then I shut the door again. This time, they did not knock immediately. For a moment, there was silence. Then I heard my mother's voice, lower this time, but still carrying the same venom. "This is not over, Jake." I smirked. "Yes, Mom," I muttered under my breath. "It really is." The next few days passed in a blur of tension. I expected them to try something. Maybe a passive-aggressive text, maybe a dramatic email, maybe another round of extended family pressure. But to my surprise, nothing came. No calls, no emails, no word from anyone. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, but instead, it felt like the world had shifted. I was not constantly on edge anymore. I was not listening for my mother's guilt trips or my dad's weak apologies. It was like they had all vanished, and for once, I could breathe freely. Then, 2 weeks later, I came home from work to find a small envelope stuck to my front door. It was white and unmarked, with nothing but my name scribbled across the front in familiar handwriting. I tore it open, expecting something passive-aggressive or manipulative, and I was not disappointed. The note said, "Jake, this is your last chance. You are throwing everything away for pride. Ethan may have been chosen as executor of the estate, but you are still family. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Come to your senses. You'll regret it." There was no signature, just the same tired threats. I crumpled it up and threw it in the trash without a second thought. A few more days passed, and then I received another message. This time, it was not a letter. It was an email from my mother's address. "Jake, I really thought you'd come around. You're the one who always told us family is everything. Now you're turning your back on us. We're struggling. We need you. Ethan's making a mess of things. Please, let's fix this before it's too late." This time, I actually felt a little something. Anger. The audacity of trying to make me feel guilty about their mess. The audacity of pulling the old family is everything card when they had chosen Ethan over me from the start. I took a deep breath. Then I deleted the email without replying. That was when I realized something important. I was not really mad anymore. I was just done. And yet, I still had not heard from Ethan. He was silent. His arrogance had been replaced by something else, something more desperate, but he was not saying anything to me directly. I had to admit, part of me was surprised. Ethan, the one who had always believed he was untouchable, was not making a move. I half expected him to show up at my door with some fake apology, but he did not. Then, one afternoon, out of nowhere, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something told me I should pick up. I answered, and sure enough, it was my mother's voice. "Jake, please." She was crying. I could hear it clearly, and for a second, I was taken aback. "You need to come over. Ethan's lost the house. He's messing everything up. We have nowhere to go. Please, we need you to help us." For the first time, I felt nothing. No sympathy, no guilt, no obligation. I almost felt a strange sense of relief. This was it. This was what I had been waiting for without even realizing it. They had chosen Ethan. They had trusted Ethan. They had given him everything. And now that he had made a mess of it, they wanted me to come back and clean it up. Instead of responding immediately, I let the silence linger. I could feel her desperation through the phone. I could feel her waiting for me to soften, waiting for the old Jake to return, the Jake who would sigh, fix the problem, and absorb the disrespect afterward. But I was not that person anymore. I was not about to be dragged back into that cycle of manipulation. "No," I finally said, my voice calm. "This is your problem, Mom. You always wanted him to be the golden child, and now you get to deal with the consequences of that choice. You chose him to handle everything. You trusted him. You do not get to pull me into your mess now." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she whispered, "Jake, please, I don't know what else to do." I did not even flinch. I spoke my next words as coldly as I could. "You should have thought of that before you decided I wasn't good enough to be part of the family." Then I hung up. The phone did not ring again for weeks. I did not hear from anyone. But strangely enough, I felt better. The weight of years of resentment, manipulation, guilt, and unfairness had finally been lifted. Then one day, while I was at the store, I saw a familiar face in the parking lot. It was my father. He was walking toward a beat-up car carrying some bags. I had not seen him in weeks. For a moment, I debated whether to approach him. Part of me wondered if there was anything left to say, but something inside me knew there was nothing left to fix. So I turned away. I ignored the way he called my name. And that was the last time I saw him. So, here I am, a year later. I have not heard a single word from my parents or Ethan. Part of me wonders whether they are still struggling. Part of me wonders whether they ever realized what they did wrong. But honestly, I am okay. Maybe for once in my life, it is time for me to take care of myself. So Reddit, what do you think? Did I go too far? Should I have tried to fix things instead of shutting them out? Let me know your thoughts.